First off, when it comes to like evaluating a movie, right? You have to ask yourself, how much do I allow other movies to influence my evaluation of this movie, right? And like even Sean calls back to this when he says like, well, we'll wait for another movie to see how this plays out. And I think there's a certain element of like, I'm not going to go and like critique like the plot of a movie or the way that characters function by pulling from every single bit of Star Wars knowledge that I have. But I think when it comes to evaluating a movie, you need to be evaluating it in the context of the universe that it's set in. And I talked to Maverick about this, and it's like, why make a Star Wars movie?
Mm-hmm.
If you're wanting to make a movie but not obey the laws of that universe, then just make a different movie with a different universe. And so, like, I'm almost like thinking of the idea of like a social contract. Like you're there for a reason, right? You're agreeing to the laws of that universe by making a movie set in that universe. And so I think that there's definitely some like weight to be held in terms of evaluating what are the established laws of this universe. And so when you're, I think at the very least, looking to the movies 4, 5, and 6 to what are the laws of like how these Jedi function. And so with the character of Luke, you have a character who is the son of Darth Vader. You have a character who is very obviously Force sensitive. He has been even like given a small amount of training by Obi-Wan. And in 5, he's been training with Yoda for weeks. And yet at the same, or maybe it's like a week. I don't remember the exact time frame, but he's been getting some form of training. And it's an intense form of training because Luke is very much not enjoying it. And Luke's on his own journey of like doubt in 5. And so he's had plenty of time to kind of stew and dwell on his Force abilities and kind of get accustomed to them. And in his fight with Darth Vader, he gets his rear end soundly handed back to him and gets his hand cut off. And this is Darth Vader. This is someone who is like in terms of what is set up for Luke, he's set up as being very powerful.
Yeah.
Rey is being set up as being very powerful as well. And yet at the same time, it's been established that like Darth Vader, and you also can call back to 1, 2, and 3 as well, because these are the movies that we're drawing from as the audience when we're watching 7, 8, and 9. And if you've never seen 1 through 6, okay, well, I guess you just came to see a movie because you came to see a movie. But at the same time, you need to ask yourself as the director, when you're making a movie, if you disobey the laws of a universe, sure, you might appeal to the people who've never seen 1 through 6, but everyone who has is not going to be happy with that movie, and you're not going to be making you're not going to have the same success you would beforehand. And so, like, it's been established that Anakin's powerful. It's been established Luke's powerful. It's kind of believable that, like, you could set up Rey as being a powerful character, but without the training that she has, I don't see her ever beating Kylo Ren in combat.
I'm going to pop in just a slightly.
Sure, go ahead.
Do you think that the goal of the movie or this podcast is talking about whether it's a good plot or whether it makes the audience happy, right? Because I think that if a director is violating a pre-established law of the universe, like you feeling like this is deeply wrong, it's discordant, it doesn't make sense, right? That sense of wrongness can be like a deliberate weapon against you, which is you, the audience member, you feel something's wrong. And that's the whole point. There is something wrong. Why is she powerful? Why can she beat Kylo Ren, right? This is like, perhaps, Andrew, like we don't need to say that any instance of breaking a law of the universe is like necessarily wrong, because sometimes breaking things is okay, because if you feel bad about them being broken, it's for the right reason, which is you should feel bad and you want to know why.
Right. And here's the thing is like there has to be a difference here between when it comes to the rules of the universe, excessive strain versus a violation. In that I would argue that there are movies after this one that have clear violations of rules that they set up. And these are more hard and fast rules so that they say, this is how this functions fundamentally. And you can't do this, you can't do that, blah, blah, blah. And so in that case, when you break that rule, that's a problem. There's other kinds of situations, kind of like what we're discussing here, where it's a situation of excessive strain. Not that it can't occur, but there needs to be a very good justification for why it occurs. And this is even seen to a certain degree earlier in the series where you have Anakin Skywalker, where he's an anomaly in and of himself, and his ability to become such a powerful Jedi Master when he goes into training far beyond when he should be, shows a certain degree of excessive strain in a world that this should not occur, but he is so powerful, and his birthright in some ways justifies how this existence occurs. And so the question is does Rey have a similar or even greater justification for having this excessive power? And this movie doesn't answer it. And as much as I hate it, I would even argue that the answer they give kind of justifies it. I don't know that the answer that they give necessarily is fully cohesive, to be clear, and that's a later movie. But the answer that they give, I think, justifies the power.
I think, okay, there's a couple things here. I think if we're evaluating the movie in terms of how the question is answered, you like harken back to Anakin being accepted in the Jedi Order. All of the problems one has when you're talking about in this element of the movie, I think you still at least have a justification for why the rules of the universe are broken in that movie. The justification is It's his birthright. He's the chosen one. And even with Anakin, you have a very similar thing that similar path that Luke goes through, where he is literally the chosen one. He has more force potential than Master Yoda himself, okay? And yet he still gets beaten by Count Dooku in combat in episode 2. Anakin still has problems and weaknesses that befall him in terms of even after being trained in the ways of the Force is for over a decade is still being beaten. Whereas Rey has never even, keep in mind, her problems with her duel with Kylo Ren are twofold. One, she's never used the Force before other than to like part of the interrogation, and then all of a sudden she can mind control. But two, she's never even picked up the lightsaber before. She's touched it. She's never wielded it. Like a lightsaber, one, it's been established that like you need training to use this thing. Like even Luke, when he kind of like picks it up, is like waving it around. And Obi-Wan's like, yeah, you need to learn how to use this thing. And so it's like, how does she beat someone who's been training like his entire life with a lightsaber in the Force when she's never even used like either until that day? And so like, I think in terms of straining the rules, this is like borderline breaking them. Like, I think that's how much strain is going into this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love the lightsaber battle. I'm not gonna lie. What I'm trying to do is provide an alternative explanation that at least in some ways justifies where we're at.
I'm also serving intentionally as the greatest critic that this movie might ever get on this podcast because I know Maverick and Sean want to be contrarian with me. So
I'm not contrarian.
I'm going to take Maverick is at least. Sean has his own opinions.
That's hilarious.